Oh, hi there. It's me, Trevor Ickrath, the host of Earwolf's Hallelujah Monkeyz Gorillaz podcast. This episode that you're about to listen to was originally recorded to come out last week, around, Tuesday or so, I think. But unfortunately, my co-host, who will remain nameless, had a bunch of shit go down, and so it couldn't make it happen. But here it is now. Still perfectly good. Just talking about some news that's maybe a little older. Hope you enjoy it. Trevor Ickrath, signing off.
This is Damon Albarn, and you're listening to Hallelujah Monkeyz, the number one Gorillaz podcast in the world.
Hello and welcome to Hallelujah Monkeyz for November 7th. My name is Dylan Flynn.
My name is Trevor Ickrath.
Trevor Ickrath.
Dylan Flynn. We're a day late.
We're a day late. Sorry.
We're a day late. We're recording at night. I'm very sleepy, but it's a good episode for that.
It is. It's good. This is the tone. This is the tone. It's even a little rainy and muggy where I am. So that's kind of perfect.
It's almost raining by me, which is LA's trying very hard.
Trip report. The bat mitzvah went great.
Your sister's a woman now?
She's a woman now. She really impressed all of us. The rabbi was cool and young and hip. She had a backward baseball cap, and she straddled a chair and said, "Let's rap about Moses."
Did they lift the chair up while she was sitting in it, like, backwards? That would have been pretty cool.
No, but Shelly and I did link hands and do the big dance in the circle, so that was a thing.
There you go. Religions, man.
Religions. My religion is Gorillaz news. You want to hear some?
Yeah, why don't we break into it?
It's all good news now.
Hey, don't forget, after the show, we're still premiering exclusive world premiere Gorillaz vs. Log S tracks, and this week's is a banger. You should check it out.
That last one was so good, too. And yeah, I listened to the new one before we started recording, and he just keeps on churning out very impressive stuff.
Sick, and totally different than last week's, like, tone-wise. This one's called Work It Out. And maybe from the title, you can work out what some of the material being used is. What do you think? Trevor.
Dylan.
Did you know that we're in the middle of perhaps the first act of the European leg of the Humans 2017 tour?
It's upon us. I bet they're really doing some cool stuff with the set list, really switching stuff up to give our fellow Gorillaz fans abroad some new tasty treats.
Wrong.
No?
And
no?
Also, they brought back Don't Get Lost in Heaven, Demon Days closer, and in its place, completely jettisoned Plastic Beach, like I told them not to do.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad that they're not closing the entire show with it anymore.
Me too, but I told them, you remember, I know.
Damon must have missed that episode.
He's been busy.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, there's been no debuts or anything so far. They are bringing Every Planet We Reach back. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and Oh Green World, and they're playing Some Kind of Nature pretty consistently now.
Yeah, that debuted towards the end of the North American dates, and they're doing it a lot, which is interesting because it's like, are they going to do something with it? I mean, obviously Lou isn't there. I don't know.
Right? Yeah, I don't know. Who would be cool to hear handle that vocal line?
I mean, look, at this point, all I'm really doing is waiting for Ben Mendelsohn to show up, so I'll just say Ben Mendelsohn.
Come on, man. Come on, Ben. Come through.
Any of them, really.
Yeah. Until then, how about Jamie Principle?
Jamie Principle would be sick. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, give him Some Kind of Nature.
For sure. He's got a little bit of a Lou Reed energy to him too. You know, like much more like. A much more energetic version of it, like a cocaine version of Lou Reed's heroin vibe, but the same kind of, you know.
Or they could get Puma Everett to do it.
Ooh, that would also be awesome, although I think he's missed the last couple of dates. What's going on?
He is. What's going on? I don't think he's on the tour anymore.
I
don't think he could I think he wasn't able to make the European leg. Although that's what I've heard, but I don't know.
Pevin Everett, who was there for every date of the North American tour, they never let him do halfway to the halfway house, huh?
Disappointing, right? Yeah, I know you were holding out for that one, and I was right there with you.
Seems like it would have been a show of respect.
Exactly.
You know? But who knows? Maybe he'll be back. Maybe he's just taking a little breather.
Even come back home to the Gorillaz tour.
Did you know that Damon's been talking to the South American press?
Right, he was on Rolling Stone in Argentina or something, right?
Yeah, Gorillaz are the cover story on this month's edition. It's got a big picture of 2D on the cover, you know?
I think this might have been the Rolling Stone article I referred to in our bonus episode, talking about the version of Charger with Pauline Black on it, but I'm not totally sure.
The one that I saw was like a cool, like Damon took a couple of shots at Liam Gallagher that were very funny.
Always fun.
But the best part was, you know, one of the themes of Phase 4 has been Damon Albarn becoming a fan of Damon Albarn and of Gorillaz, you know?
Right, that's always good. Yeah, looking back at his catalog and going like, hey, I'm pretty into this stuff.
And there's a relevant quote. Do you want to handle it? You want to take it?
Yeah, I can handle it. I believe Damon said something along the lines of, sometimes I fantasize about the continued progression of the music of Blur, Gorillaz, the one I recorded in Mali and the Congo, the Good, the Bad, and the Queen, my solo material. If all my work was like a long set list, probably the middle point would be the song Caramel of 13, or something from the first Gorillaz album.
Well, I like this thought exercise for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should extrapolate, and let's say that it is the latter, Trevor. What song from Gorillaz self-titled would you select to be the middle point of like Damon Albarn's evolution as a musician?
Oh, it's got to be Rehash.
Ooh, you like Rehash. That's a good call.
It's gotta be Rehash because, you know, it's got the kind of guitar-driven pop that he had just gotten fresh off Blur doing, you know? I mean, like, with a few tonal adjustments, maybe some rearrangements, that song could have ended up on, like, Blur's self-titled, almost. But it's got that, but it's also got the kind of, like, you know, the sample work and the dub influences and that kind of stuff that would inform so much of his, like, post-Gorillaz work, too.
I can feel that. It's interesting that he chose Caramel, you know, like
right. Yeah, I wouldn't have seen that one coming at all. Maybe because he thinks that was one of his big forward leaps into like being a little more experimental.
Right, which is why the one that I picked, even though I don't think it's a particularly great song, as the midpoint. And here's what I was thinking, Trevor. This should be a song where I can both recognize the Damon Albarn who I've known up until this song, but then also extrapolate the Damon Albarn he would become after this song, right?
I'm trying to guess what you're gonna pull out, and I feel like I got it down to like 3, maybe.
Okay, well, I'll tell you this right now. It's not a great song, but
okay. I think I feel like I know what it is.
I think it's Soundcheck Gravity.
That's what I was gonna say. It was between that, Tomorrow Comes Today, and New Genius. And when you were like, "It's not a great song," I was like, "Well, those two are out." So
well,
yeah,
I think that's like the Cro-Magnon Damon Albarn song on the self-titled in a way.
But if I can reach back into some older Damon interviews, he actually cited "On Your Own" from the self-titled Blur album as the first true Gorillaz song. So that might be a good place to, like, you know, stick that particular flag.
That's another song that I don't think is very good.
I hate that song. It's one of the worst Blur album songs, like, for sure. Definitely like bottom 3 Blur singles too, probably. We all go hot potato in the disco.
I understand what the label saw in it, but boy, it's not really for me.
Yeah.
The big news, of course, this week, Trevor, is that we had the single release of Garage Palace.
Garage Palace, or Garage Paris.
Garage Paris. With, by the way, if you look at the full credits for this, well, let's get into it. So there was the single release. It went up on Spotify. It has its own cool little album art,
and with it came this really neat little, quotes, visualizer.
Yeah, which I'm almost tempted to just, if Strobe Light is a Gorillaz video, this feels like...
Oh my God, and I liked this so much more than Strobe Light.
I know, I feel like if the Strobe Light's a Gorillaz video, this ought to be a Gorillaz video.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't capture the tone of Humans quite the way Strobe Light does, but it's so much fun.
It's a lot of fun. It was directed by Noah Harris, who also made that little We Got the Power stop-motion clip for Eon.
Right, with all the toys.
Which was also a lot of fun. And
yeah, that was cool, but I like this a lot better. We should probably say what it is, right? It's kind of like, it's a tribute to, like, I guess, old arcade games, really. That's what I recognized.
It's all done in pixel art.
Right, and the first half is kind of this side-scrolling beat-em-up segment. That's a lot like I don't know if, like, anyone else will get these references, but, like, the old, like, Ninja Turtles games, the old X-Men games, this really good Simpsons arcade game that they used to have.
For sure. My favorite piece of art in the whole video is during that part. It's when Sims is like creating these rings of blue energy out of her hands.
Yeah, that part was very
And there's
sweet.
like all these ninjas flying away from the point of impact. Really cool.
Mm-hmm. You got 2D driving the car while, like, Russell blows him away with like a Gatling gun or something.
Yeah, interesting. I'd love to know how that all exactly shook out. Jamie Hewlett does not have a credit in the credits of this video.
Interesting.
Like somebody else gets like additional character design. Somebody's credited with Little Sims character design. No Jamie Hewlett credit whatsoever. Some of it looks like it was definitely just pixel art interpolations of Jamie Hewlett, existing Jamie Hewlett art.
Yeah, I felt like some stuff was pretty recognizable.
But some of it seemed like it might be new. And then like you said, after the beat 'em up thing, it sort of transitions into like a top down and side scrolling like shmup, like a shoot 'em up style.
Yeah, I can't name any games like this like off the top of my head, but I'm sure I played some like while waiting for like a pizza in Pizza Hut or something.
Yeah, 1942 comes to mind. There's a bunch of these, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
And then she kind of like is making her way to this giant tower. Let's go ahead and call it the Garage Palace, I suppose.
Sure. Okay.
And then she ascends to the top to face the boss, who's like this giant golden Buddha.
With like a neon smile that keeps turning into a frown and back again.
Yeah, very cool, very interesting. I wonder, like,
and it leaves us at a cliffhanger because we don't find out how that battle goes.
Well, yeah, it just says enter coins to continue, and I threw change at my MacBook and nothing happened. Unfortunately,
Do you think she could have done it, Lil Sims? Do you think she could have taken out that boss?
I mean, if she saved one of her super attacks, I think it's totally in the bag for her.
That's the trick, saving one of your super attacks right till the end.
Exactly. Very cool video. So much more than I was expecting. You know, really, part of it, I think, was that we had so much build up to that strobe light video that it could only really disappoint us, you know?
Yeah, whereas they kind of just dropped this in our laps. Like, here.
I assumed we were going to get that same, like, flickering panel shot of the humans' faces like we always get, you know?
Right, yeah.
But this was very cool, very original, and the pixel art style works very well with the Gorillaz character. Where's my 4-player Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style?
Seriously.
You know.
Oh, I still want a JRPG.
Also would be sick.
That would be my shit, yeah.
I'll take any of them.
One day we're going to have an entire, maybe it'll be a bonus episode or something where you and I sit down and plot out a Gorillaz like RPG. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Best Dressed Award, got to give to Sims for her big, crazy, flowing anime red coat. That's very cool.
Not that Buddha?
I love that Buddha. I do love that Buddha. That's probably, other than her energy attacks, that's like one of my favorite parts of the video. So
right, yeah.
Welcome to the canon. You're the second best Phase 4 Gorillaz video in the humble opinion of this podcast co-host.
Which probably puts you in like maybe like the top 5 or 6 Gorillaz videos, period. Because I mean, I was thinking about them. Not a lot there.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe.
We'll see how that shakes out
when we eventually do our Gorillaz video retrospective.
Speaking of retrospectives, do you want to get into the roundtable?
Yeah, let's talk about the good, the bad, and
Netflix's The Queen.
The Queen. So Dylan, these past couple episodes, I've started out our roundtable section by kind of painting a picture with words for you. And
I was hoping you'd do the same. Of course,
yes. So I believe the beginning of this story starts as soon as Gorillaz Phase 2 ends. Okay, this is I feel like this probably doesn't track actual timeline wise, but here's what I picture. Okay, Damon walks into his apartment fresh off Gorillaz Phase 2. He's probably just gotten home from one of the Apollo gigs, and he takes off his hat, hangs it up, takes off his coat, and what does he do? Damon Albarn's like a workaholic, right? So he
keeps office hours famously.
He sits down at his his little piano in his studio apartment or whatever he lives in now, his home office, and he's looking out. What's that river? The Thames?
The Thames River flows right through, bisects London into north and south.
Sure, and he's looking out at the river, and he's thinking, you know what? I think Gorillaz is over now. You know, I got to put it on the back burner. I think it's finally time for me to do a solo album. My Damon Albarn. This album by Damon Albarn. Maybe I'll even self-title it. But what does he see? What does he see? looking out the window, just as he's coming up. No, just as he's coming up with his solo album idea, a whale crests up out of the water, and he's just transfixed by it. And he grabs a pen and he crosses out the Damon Albarn solo album that he's written on this piece of sheet music that he's put over his piano, and he scrawls the good, the bad, and the Queen. And as he finishes it, as he adds in that last Oxford comma, which we should probably talk about, the room it shakes, and I imagine he has a big, collection of records, and a couple fall out onto the ground, and he picks them up, and what is he finds London Calling by The Clash, Urban Hymns, one of the last great Britpop records by The Verve. It's got Bittersweet Symphony on it, classic, and a Fela Kuti album, because Tony Allen drums on those, right? He picks those up and he's like, I know what I got to do now. And the rest is history.
It's all thanks to that whale.
Yep.
History song.
Where is it now?
This album came out in 2007, January of Trevor Aircraft, and let me mention. You already mentioned one of them, but I want to point out 4 albums that I think kind of form a galaxy of albums with this album.
Let me hear it.
I kind of see this album as a tribute to London Calling. I kind of see it as a sequel to Park Life.
Absolutely.
I see it as a spiritual successor to Arthur and the Decline of the British Empire by the Kinks.
That's a great album. No Kinks members here, though.
No, but I see, the way that album looked at the declining importance of the British identity in post-war England. I feel like this does a similar thing. And then, of course, it's impossible to underplay the fact that this is really a companion piece to Demon Days. It's pondering the same kind of Chicken Little end of the world ideas, just on a much more micro scale.
And it moves very similarly as well. It kind of starts off in the dark, and then we're slowly led through to a lighter part of the album with this kind of really transcendent finish where we kind of finally crest the melancholy. And
last week, Trevor, I controversially mentioned that I list this album as one of my favorites of the decade.
You did. That shocked me a little bit. I got to say, I really do enjoy this album quite a lot, but that would be a bit of a stretch for me. I
want to give you a little bit more context. I do think it's a brilliant album, although it is not perfect or unflawed. But I moved to London, England in the summer of 2006, and by January of 2007...
so there was no way this wasn't going to be one of your favorite albums.
Exactly. By January of 2007, I was living in this dilapidated, falling apart flat share in Muswell Hill, where there were leaks in the ceiling, and we had at least 1 or 2 rats who had lived in there, and we had this angry Greek landlord who would illegally enter our house while we were all asleep and hungover and scream at us because the rent was late. I mean, the vibes of my life at that time were very much the vibes of this album, so it's very special to me on a personal level.
Interesting. Yeah, I imagine it would be. Well, I wanted to ask you something real quick as somebody who actually lived in London around this time. Does this sound like 2007 England to you?
I think that the vibe there was funnier than this. I think that there's a British gallows humor that is indivisible in times of national embarrassment. It's so kind of important to the British identity, and there was a whole lot of eye rolling happening in England at this time, as opposed to kind of gloom and ire, although both of those were also present from what I witnessed. But it does absolutely capture the visual reality of London of this time, and the fog and the rain and the vibes in that sense. But I think it also probably speaks more to the inner realities of the British people at that time rather than the social realities. You know what I mean?
Very interesting. Because something I wanted to talk about with this album is I think it has a very interesting kind of sense of time and place. Like we said, it's kind of for all intents and purposes a sequel to Park Life.
Yeah,
and that absolutely. It's kind of this long form exploration about what it means to be English through glimpses and sketches of everyday English life.
Yeah.
But I've always thought Parklife paints like a very specific portrait of England in like the 90s, whereas this album's England almost feels like it's kind of like unstuck in time.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like we're in the 19th century, maybe. You know?
I actually feel like a lot of it sounds like it takes place during World War One.
Sure, I can feel that too.
Like there's all this talk of war and like soldiers, and I think it's interesting that Damon got someone from The Clash to play bass on this album, because like the lyrics feature a lot of the same imagery that Joe Strummer would employ when writing about like English nostalgia on my favorite Clash album, Sandinista.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that album.
Yeah, in songs like Something About England and Rebel Waltz.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I also felt like we seemed to be floating backwards in time at times, and then
very timey-wimey, dreamy-weemy.
Yeah, and then every now and then I feel like he places a flag kind of boldly and explicitly here in the present.
Right, there are these moments where we can tell kind of like where we are, I think.
But yeah, okay. So let me ask you, do you have 3 adjectives for me?
I do. I think they're all pretty straightforward, actually.
Me too. Go for it.
I got melancholic.
Great.
Wistful.
Nice.
And I had to do it. English.
I like it.
Yeah.
As you know, I like to use my third to make kind of a critical pass at the album as well. So
sure.
2 of these are perhaps positive and one's maybe a little bit more negative, but my 3 are mournful, groovy.
Nice. Okay.
And the one that here's my critical one, stiff. I think at times The Good, the Bad, and the Queen sounds like the work of a new band, of a band that doesn't exactly know all of its chemistry backwards and forwards. There are especially some songs on here where there's a lot of like pre-sequenced synth lines, and the band is kind of awkwardly trying to wrap themselves around it. Which adds. I mean, it's definitely a sound. It's definitely these songs all sound like the same band. It's just sometimes they feel very at ease with each other, and sometimes they feel a little bit like, okay, I guess you're doing that. I guess I'll do something like this. You know?
Interesting. I think they more often than not they lock into the same groove together.
Well, I think when they do, it's potent.
I'll be interested in hearing you like say when they don't.
Sure. I think that the arrangements here are weird, and usually weird in a great way.
Danger Mouse, like I want to talk so much about Danger Mouse's production on this album, because as far as I'm concerned, he's basically a 5th member.
He is a 5th member, and we'll see if that carries over into the Brexit album that he's supposedly working on with this project. By the way,
it's not going to. Remember, he's producing it with Tony Visconti.
Oh shoot, you're right. Well,
yep, no Danger Mouse this time, which is going to be very interesting because he's very central to the way I hear this record.
What about the name of the band? Is that something that we should touch on?
Sure, because I want to ask you something.
Yeah,
2 things actually. Oxford comma.
I use it. I didn't always. I do give a fuck about it now.
Gotcha. That answers one question, Ezra.
but the version I have of this record, the physical version, does not have one.
All right. How about this? All right. Ready for question 2?
Yep.
And or ampersand?
I'm not looking at the cover right now, but I'm going to just go ahead and be bold and say ampersand.
I think the ampersand is kind of essential here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
And I'm not usually an ampersand guy, but I think here you need that ampersand.
I think it feels kind of ornate and English in a way that this album also feels. I do love the cover art for this album, by the way.
The cover art is another like contributor to like why I feel like this album is kind of unstuck in time. Like when is this? This is like the 1800s?
London Fire, right? It's like a painting or a drawing of the London Fire. Is that what it is?
I think the painting is from like the mid 1800s. It's by Thomas Schotter Boys. Although like whenever I looked up in like the lyric booklet on the Wikipedia, it says it's a painting of his that I don't really think it is. Like they say it's the Tower and Mint from Great Tower Hall, but like whenever you look it up, that's like not the cover of The Good, the Bad, and the Queen.
It's like the Parliament building on fire, and then like really tellingly on the other side of the fire, on the other side of the Thames, it's like all these people have kind of gathered to gawk at the fire. You know?
Yeah, they're like gawking or rioting or something like that.
It more just looks like they're excitedly watching the fire.
Yeah, I always thought they were the ones burning it down.
Which in a way, either interpretation, I think, kind of speaks to maybe some of the central themes of this record, the people in times of unrest.
Stroppy little island of mixed up people. Have we actually gone through the lineup and said who's on this record?
We probably should do that, right? So this is a super group with a capital S.
Right. And this feels like if there's like a super group club, these guys, I feel like they just make it in. Like, imagine like a super group with Simon Tong from The Verve in it.
Yeah,
He's a guitarist. Like, I feel like he's a guitarist from The Verve. I don't know a super ton about The Verve. I used to know more when I liked to like listen to more Britpop. I don't think he's the guitarist from The Verve.
That is a good point. I did not look up how prominent of a member of The Verve he is.
But he's great here. I almost feel like he's kind of like a little underutilized hidden weapon that they've got.
I think he's like a guitarist and keyboardist, like he's sort of multi-instrumentalist his way through that band or something like that. But
Damon Albarn is also here playing keyboards, and he sings.
And pedigree-wise, I think the rest of the band is pretty solid.
Right, you got Paul Simonon on bass. He's from The Clash. And you got Tony Allen. He's an Afrobeat drummer. He's kind of like a little hero of Damon's, right?
Well, and also, I mean, I love Afrobeat. Africa 70, and I mean, I can't agree with everything that Fela Kuti did in his life, but I think he was an incredible musician, and Fela even like would always go on record and say that there would be really no Afrobeat as you know it without Tony Allen. His patterns are what gave Afrobeat its sound.
He gets name checked on Blur's Music Is My Radar. Mm-hmm. Tony Allen's Got Me Dancing.
I mean, he's a fucking dynamite drummer, and the drumming on this album is incredible.
What little there is of it.
That's the thing. He sometimes he doesn't jump on.
Yeah, I mean, Danger Mouse is great, but I can't really like get behind him when he like does these kind of moves where he just ditches the drums.
Yeah, I don't know what happened,
but we'll talk about it.
We will talk about it. And that's everybody, right?
I think so, yeah. Dylan, one more question I want to ask you before we get into the song-by-song review. Do you have a shorthand for referring to this project?
I always just do TG, TB, ampersand, TQ.
God, that whole thing?
Sometimes I do GBQ.
We got to do GBQ. I'm not gonna be saying TG, TB, ampersand, TQ the entire show.
We don't need to say that out loud. That's just usually how I type it. But I mean, technically, this band doesn't have a name, so...
Right. And I think that's one of Damon's little in-jokes, you know? He loves having these little jokes with himself that he repeats like forever, where he's like, yeah, the project doesn't really have a name, but now it kind of does have a name because people are just calling it that.
We'll see what Warner Music thinks about that when he tries to release that second album.
And we'll see a little bit more of that humor later on in the show, too. It just grates on me a little bit.
Let's start off with the first song on the record, History Song.
History Song. This one's very cool.
Immediately, we establish in my opinion, the major visual motif of the record. Come the day, you'll see the sun. The sun is the motif of this record, Trevor. It is referenced over and over and over again on almost every song.
But it doesn't feel like it ever really comes out.
Well, maybe it does later.
Maybe, we'll have to see.
But here, come the day you'll see the sun. London has a complicated relationship with the sun. It's always foggy and overcast. It gets very dark in the wintertime.
It's a dreary place.
Absolutely. My take on this song is I used to just, because, you know, if you don't know it now, then you will do. That's the hook of this song, the hook lyric or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that is a kind of an English colloquialism. You will do is in like, you will know it soon. But the other way you could kind of interpret that line is about history. Like if you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat it.
I've always like heard this song as Damon singing that message to England as kind of like a cautionary song.
If you don't know it now, then you're going to do the same shit.
It's a very foreboding tune. It almost sounds like they're playing it in some kind of like aqueduct or something, you know, like late at night by some water.
I really love that organ tone, that really, really shrill, stabby organ that Damon's playing. I think it interplays really nicely with the folk picking that Simon's doing on guitar.
I love the way Simon's guitar sounds here. It sounds like Danger Mouse is kind of beginning to start messing with the kind of production that he would eventually utilize on Rome, that album he did a couple years later.
I listened to that album once through, so I kind of know what you're talking about, I guess.
It's like kind of spaghetti western almost, and Simon Tong's guitar really has like a kind of dry, twangy sound here.
Yeah, and on his big entrance, Paul Simonon immediately announces himself as a player of very weird bass lines.
Boom, 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 boom. I love it.
He always lets himself be known. He's not interested in playing your root note and staying out of the way. Paul is here to get a groove going.
Well, if you wanted to get, if you wanted somebody to stay out of the way in your supergroup, you want to get Paul.
That's true, and Tony's doing some smart and subtle stuff here. He doesn't really explode on this song, but he's in the pocket and hitting all these kind of accent rhythms, these polyrhythms that you would hope a Nigerian genius like Tony Allen would hit. It's all there.
His drum work is always employed like super subtly on this record, though. I think like sometimes you can barely hear him, but he's there. It's almost kind of haunting, like a ghost of a percussion set.
It's always fun when you listen to a Tony Allen like drum pattern. If you do 4 counts along with it, like how rarely he's hitting 1, 2, 3, or 4. He's always like finding some weird half rhythm to accent, And
Danger Mouse kind of almost attempts to match that whenever he does like programmed drums on this album, like especially during Herculean, but we'll talk about that.
With varying results.
With varying degrees of success, yes. Because how can you like compete with this guy,
Very hard to.
Which is just another reason. Why don't you put him on the album more?
Yeah, it's a little confusing. I agree. Sometimes they hold him back and employ him in parts of songs that I think are really smart. But we'll get there when we get there, I guess. Damon's really underselling his vocals in this song. He's very buttoned down.
This is let's just say it. This is Damon's old man album.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
This is Damon Albarn, like English statesman who's been in a rock band and he's had a pop band, but now he's putting on a top hat. We should mention that top hat. Damon wore a top hat this entire phase because he thought was a good idea for some reason. He would sit there behind his old little piano with his top hat on and just play these songs about England. This is the old Damon Albarn album.
And then the next song is 80s Life. This is an interesting track.
This is my favorite song on the album and one of my favorite Damon Albarn songs in general.
I do really like this song. What's that little like setting up, like settling in breathing noise that happens during the intro? I was like playing that over and over again to try to figure out exactly what that is. Is somebody just breathing into the mic? Or?
Never noticed that.
It's very interesting. This song very blatantly employs what is called the 50s progression.
I love it so much. And this is England unstuck in time for me. This is a song about 80s life, but we're using like 50s music to like set it to.
Yeah,
which is so interesting.
For you theory nerds, that's the 1-6-4-5 progression. It's in like every 50s pop song. Stand By Me.
It's like a doo-wop song.
Yeah. And
you complete with this really transcendent doo-wop bridge where you get like 5 Damons singing at once, all doing this really fun vocal stuff.
You know what it reminds me of very much? You know what that hook reminds me of very much between the Damon's backing vocals and his double track lead vocals? It totally reminds me of the Swagger.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, and then you got Simon on guitar and Paul on bass, who are kind of impersonating a doo-wop vocal ensemble with their pieces too.
Right, and Simon's guitar work during that bridge is transcendent.
It's really gorgeous.
Like he's
really
painting
gorgeous.
with like such beautiful textures there, and it's like he's really like underrated on this record in general, I think.
There's no Tony Allen on the song, is that right?
No, nope. Just not here. Didn't show up, I guess. Or Danger Mouse was like, "Hey, Tony, could you like go move my car or something? I think I might be in a no parking zone." He's like, "Sure." And then he goes out and they record this song.
What did he do during the live dates? Do you remember?
He just did a little, he played along, which he could have done here.
In spite of Tony's absence, I actually think that the mixing on this song is really cool and really interesting. The bass is like really fat and raw sounding, and it's almost like Damon's vocals are like fighting to climb above them, but never quite can. It's very interesting. And even though he's a little bit more buttoned down in the verses, he does kind of let it rip with his chorus vocals, especially the "It all looks good on you." That he really
good. He kills this one. This feels like Damon doing like karaoke or something almost.
I also love the vocalizations that happen after that chorus, Trevor. I love that little synth, the tiny like blip blip bloop that happens during that bit. Mm-hmm. So cool. It's like a detail you could almost miss because there's so much happening in the song, but it's a perfect Danger Mouseian level of texture. I actually think Danger kind of nailed this one, in my opinion.
It sounds great. I think the vocals during the bridge are a little too high. Like, they are very loud. Maybe it's just because there's so much of Damon. I think those can maybe be like brought down a little bit. But otherwise, I love the way this one sounds. It almost feels like a bit of a throwaway, but it's like deceptively great.
Well, the way that I kind of interpret the themes of the song, so 80s life, I interpret that as like a Thatcherism reference, where the way that England was kind of stuck with Tony Blair as their prime minister, and he was kind of blindly following George W. Bush's lead into the Iraq War, kind of mirrored the relationship between Thatcher and Reagan in a lot of ways. And the way that the 80s kind of looked back to the 50s, it's kind of like this, England's looking back to the 80s, so this song's like the 80s, and it's looking back to the 50s. I don't know, there's something cool about that, where like...
It all gets mixed up in this kaleidoscopic kind of sound that they create.
I also interpret Where Do I See the Light? It's All Gone Dead in a Way as another entry into the sun motif. Kind of
beautiful. Like, Damon's lyrics on this are so good.
Oh, I don't think that there's a bum lyric on this record. I think he's at the top of his game as a poet on here, and
which is like such a departure from Demon Days, where it's almost just like free association coming out of his mouth.
Sure,
you know?
For sure. I mean,
like,
he squeezes out some great lines on
and,
Demon Days, but I mean, there's poems on this record for sure.
Yeah, this is super ego Damon, whereas Demon Days is like id Damon.
Yeah, for sure. You referenced it earlier, but do you want to talk about Northern Whale?
It's Northern Whale. This is another song that doesn't have Tony Allen on it, but I really like the kind of click-clacky drum machines that Danger Mouse adds here, so I'm not going to fault him on it.
Here's the first time I feel like the band is scratching their head a little bit to figure out how they wrap around this like sequencer blip bloop part. Like it seems kind of like they eventually found a groove that kind of works. But yeah, here's a good example of what I would maybe characterize as a little bit of stiffness. Although I think this is a lovely song. This is about the time when, like you said, a whale got stuck in the Thames River.
And Damon saw it.
Damon saw it. It was a big news story.
I can't really remember what Simon Tong is doing on this one, but I really...
he's doing that little slide chord progression.
Right. I really like what Damon's doing here, though. You know, he plays a lot of... he spends a lot of time playing piano on this album, but I really love when he starts fucking around with his synths, and he almost goes into kind of like an 8-bit chiptune sound here at the end.
Yeah, it's a very Gorillaz-y idea, I think, that's happening on the synth work in this song.
Right, you can really feel the Danger Mouse influence too on this one, I think.
But I also think that the melodic choices, especially in the chorus here, are very Blur. I think that this is like he's using a lot of his Blur moves here, especially in the end of Endlessly, and I love his little ad lib.
That's really nice.
Isn't
yeah,
that pretty?
This is such a pretty song.
And the best lyric is everyone hallucinating on you. You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of that, like, maybe apocryphal tale of how the Native Americans saw the pilgrim ships coming, but their brains couldn't understand it because it was so out of place that, like, they hallucinated that they were monsters or couldn't see anything at all. Like,
how Lovecraftian. I like that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone hallucinating on you, like a whale in the Thames, is such a bizarre thing that London couldn't, conceive of it,
Maybe it's an old god washed up from the sea.
For sure. Let's do a quick list. I think now that we've officially talked about every whale song in the Gorillaz canon, let's rank the whale songs. We've got Five Whales in a Dream. We've got Plastic Beach. We've got Northern Whale, and then let's just throw in the Book of 2D is on this list, even though it's not technically a song.
Massive dick.
What bottoms out the list? What's the worst of these?
The worst. I mean, like, Five Whales in a Dream might have to, like, I do really enjoy that one, and I really like thinking of it as like a can song now. That's a lot of fun, so thank you, Maxton. But yeah, I mean, just because, it doesn't feel as developed as the other ones maybe, so I'd have to slot it down there at the bottom.
I think it might go number 1, Plastic Beach, number 2, Five Whales in a Dream, number 3, Northern Whale, number 4, the Book of 2D for me.
That one would be at the top of my list, so after that would probably... it's tough going between this and Plastic Beach for me, because I really like this a lot, and like the more I think about it, the more I like it. But I mean, I'd have to probably stick with Plastic Beach.
It's such a jam, and some of the best lyrics on a Gorillaz song, in my opinion. Just the imagery.
They're
of
a
it.
lot of fun.
I don't have much else to say about Northern Whale. Are you ready to move on to Kingdom of Doom?
Kingdom of Doom. That sound that Simon keeps hitting here, I love it.
This might be, in my opinion, the first classic cut of this record. I really love this song.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it was the second single, I think, and yeah, this one feels like one of the keepers from this era. You know, it feels definitive of this work.
The sun motif is back when the sunset wheel begins turning into the night, which is the sun leaving us behind.
The moon's out though too. You know, and you got some ravens flying across it.
The second half of that lyric, though, I see everything in black and white. That's such a good lyric.
So
good. When we're at war, especially unjust war, the world feels like it's frighteningly and simplistically divided into the evil and the resistance in the world, you know? And
this is the same Damon that wrote Demon Days for sure.
Absolutely. What great lyrics. What great lyrics. These arrangements are so bizarre, and they could almost get in the way of the songwriting, especially Damon's kind of relentless plink, 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 plink. But they work. They work somehow. There's a much more traditional approach that the band could have taken to this song, and it might have really resonated as a more standard classic entry in the Damon catalog. But all the weird choices here only help, in my opinion.
How would you describe that sound Simon keeps making with his guitar?
I don't even know. It's like
I've been trying to pin it down. I feel like since I heard this album, and now it makes sense to me because I was reading the lyrics, and you got these lyrics about a sunset wheel, and it sounds like spinning.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. It is.
It's like he's spinning a giant Wheel of Fortune-esque thing, and every option is England is really sad.
Maybe a little Ouroboros-y too.
Yeah. I really another lyric I really like is a love song for the collaboration. I don't know what collaboration means in this context, but it makes me think of political subterfuge or something, or the way you'd collaborate on a crime.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I'm in a Le Carre novel.
It feels like it's connected to that idea of the black and the white and perhaps unholy alliances between them.
Yeah, this song is basically asking to be adapted into a political thriller.
Damon's kind of back to his undersold history song style on the verses, but he really busts out vocally on the hook.
The whole band gets to kind of rock out at the end of this one too. If you look at some live performances, this is about as animated as they get.
And Tony again is not present for a lot of this song.
Nope, just not here. He's on two songs on I think he's on two songs on the first half of this record.
Yeah.
We've only heard from him once so far.
I know, and he's arguably the instrumental genius of the band.
Yeah, right? By far the most influential and the most hallowed figure.
How weird.
Seriously, Danger Mouse must have been hey, Tony, can you go pick up some lunch for us? So sure. Is this let's just say it, he gets rustled here. How does this happen? Two here. Damon bands in a row.
No kidding, yeah.
You get this really great black drummer,
and then he's just nowhere. He's just nowhere.
Get this guy on a kit.
And yet, every time he shows up, it's so incredible that he feels like a big part of this album. So
right, yeah. I mean, it'd be nice if he's on this next song, right?
Herculean. This to me is the stiffest song on the record, and it was also the first preview track.
It is, and I think it serves as a really great centerpiece.
There's a lot I like about it. It explores a lot of the same themes of Demon Days, where it's there's a coming apocalypse, and then it's mixed with the kind of quotidian daily life in the West imagery. I love Tony on the song. His entrance feels so exciting. When he finally shows up, is great. He only plays on the interludes and the outro, which is weird and cool. I like the way that he's used sparingly here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so, but it feels like in the other parts of the song, Danger Mouse is also kind of trying to emulate him.
Maybe a little bit, but quietly. So it's still kind of explored when he shows up.
I think this one does sound the most like a Gorillaz song here.
Maybe you're right. I would almost tie it with Northern Whale just because of that synth piece, but yeah, I could feel that.
I wanted to ask you, what do you think the title refers to? Because Herculean means in some way comparable to Hercules, but what is Damon using it to describe here?
I think that he's talking about how trying to show up to work every day and wash your face and do the daily grind is so fucking hard.
I totally feel that. And like, listening to this song today, like more than ever, when I think about the like loops of cognitive dissonance I have to jump through just to get out of like bed in today's world, it feels like more timely than ever.
Absolutely.
And one of my favorite lyrics is the medicine man's here 24/7. You can get it fast in Armageddon.
Really good.
Because like I like take anxiety meds, but when you think about how many people like need that kind of stuff in this day and age, it makes you think about the state of things. Like Tom York said, red wine and sleeping pills.
Yeah, exactly. And again, just the way that line resolves with Tony's entrance is so exciting. That's such a good, what a good drummer. He's such a good drummer.
And Danger Mouse really is working overtime here too. This song almost doesn't sound like it's by like a band at all. It's
almost
just this
not.
huge kind of
the outro is
thing.
really beautiful too, with the oohs and the ahs are very beautiful.
Definitely.
Behind the Sun is...
This next one's very beautiful too.
It's also very dubby. It's got this very dubby like verse and intro,
Very much. And Simon's guitar really also recalls the Specials, I think. Like Ghost Town. I get that kind of vibe from it. This is in my top 3, by the way. This is probably like number 3.
That's really cool. I like the song quite a bit too. There's that lyric in it that feels like one of the most like... Because I feel like the difference here on Demon Days and Good Bad Queen is that it's like, this feels like much more of an indictment of the British people at times.
Really? Interesting.
There's that lyric in this song, the hard day come from the magical lamp that you touch, which feels like this indictment of greed. Like all the things that we wanted and wished for and yearned for are what brought us to this point in time, I've always interpreted it as kind of more like an innocent read. Like I feel like it's very McCartney-esque. Like it sounds to me like a song about like the importance of not losing sight about the things that made you feel hopeful when you were younger. I think it's totally
I
think it's an active juxtaposition of present horrors with the simplicity of childhood. Like
I've always thought this one was like about like remembering like emotional refuge.
I think we're literally just cutting back and forth to like a simpler earlier time and the horrors of the present day. But I'm say,
stuck in time.
Damon's falsetto here is really lovely. Although that little legato that he's doing, the cool breeze, that's a pretty direct lift from 13 by Big Star. I don't know if you've noticed that before.
I love that song though.
It is, but I mean,
never
I feel
drawn
like
that connection. Interesting.
It's very, very similar, the move that he does there. Obviously, the sun motif is still present there.
Mm-hmm. And I love the strings on this track. The strings throughout this album are great, but this one's a real highlight. This and another song that we'll talk about later.
There's more interpolation happening here, because when the strings come in, that cello part it's also kind of like doing an interpolation of that Edvard Grieg song, Morning Mood. Da, na, 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 na. You know that bit?
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Which makes me think we're thinking about sunrise here when he's talking about the cool breeze behind the sun. And again, I feel like the sun hasn't come up. He's just remembering times when it has been up,
We're still wandering through the darkness.
The chorus and the verses feel a little bit like segregated from each other here, but I don't mind that.
Yeah, they definitely have like a different sound to I guess themselves. I mean, like the verses feel very kind of spooky, and like I said, the choruses feel a lot lighter.
Delicate.
Delicate's a good word for it, yeah.
And I think Damon's voice here is really lovely. Like at times his falsetto is very, very vulnerable sounding, like he's not going for like the slickest takes here. He's going for like maybe the rawest and the most vulnerable sounding takes, and it makes for a really lovely performance, I think.
Yeah, and I often when Damon goes into like emotional mode, like I often have like a hard time kind of buying it, just because like, he's such a performer. But whenever he like kind of tugs at your heartstrings on this album, it really strikes me as very genuine. Yeah,
I agree with you. Top hat aside, there's not a lot of showman Damon happening.
No,
here.
he's really on display here. I think this is a lot of this cuts very close to home for him, and you can tell. He's
being very personal, and he's also being very English, especially on this next song, which is English as fuck.
This one is great. Like, it's between this one and like another one for my top 3, but can I use the song as like an excuse to talk about Danger Mouse's production? I feel like I've been like circling it, but I really want to nail it to the floor here.
Yeah, fuck yeah. So this song is called Bunting Song.
Bunting Song, and bunting is like kind of like fabric decorations and stuff you hang outside at a festival. Like those triangular flags and stuff like that.
You know how that weirdo who you hung out with in college in his dorm, he had those like Indian prayer flags? That's the type of bunting.
Sure, something like that. But like I have a history with this album too. It's not like, I didn't move to England or anything like that. Like, I think I was in like my second year of high school when this came out.
Sure. And
it was the first like big Damon Albarn project that was happening since I got into Gorillaz, I think.
Yeah.
So I was following Damon's career pretty closely, which like at that time involved listening to like bootlegs of all the shows that The Good, the Bad, and the Queen were doing running up to the album release. Like they would play like around pubs, and they played at like the BBC Electric Proms, and they would just play like the album straight through.
Right.
So I had like a couple bootlegs that I would just listen to before this album came out, and like it was just like four dudes playing like pop songs, But then like the album comes out and it's like, surprise, Danger Mouse has turned them into this kind of like a weirder, almost electronically like psychedelic band.
At the time, I think very much to the chagrin of a lot of the people in the Damon Albarn fan community.
The production was initially like a really big stumbling block for me, and I didn't like it at first, but in time I learned to really enjoy it. And like I've said, sometimes he gets in his own way, but I really like appreciate the character his production adds, and like the way it kind of warps the experience, that like in a way that almost reminds me of like the literary genre magical realism.
Oh, sure, like 100 Years of Solitude and things like that.
Yeah, like these songs are like memories we're having, but because they exist in our mind, like the experience can become supernatural. Like I wouldn't have been surprised if like there was a song on this record where Damon like met King Arthur or something, which goes back to what I was saying about this England being unstuck in time.
There's so much imagery of that. So like, I guess in England, there's a lot of kind of certain events or holidays where traditionally bunting would be hung, St. George's Day and that sort of thing. And also, I mean, to continue the Englishness of the song, it even directly references an English nursery rhyme, Bye Baby Bunting.
Mm-hmm. This song makes me think of like a small British like pastoral community sequestered somewhere in the woods, kind of like pulling all their stuff out to get ready for like a traditional festival or something.
For sure, that nursery rhyme will put you right into that spot too. Bye baby bunting, daddy's gone a hunting, gone to get a rabbit skin to wrap the baby bunting in.
Yep, I feel like I've grown up in this like community straight out of like The Village by M. Night Shyamalan or something.
And even that one lyric, they put on a party and waited for the sunlight to recall, almost reminds me of like more of the pagan roots of high English culture, of like these festivals that you would do during the long winter months in the hope that it would bring, sunlight and warmth.
It really feels like Damon is reaching all the way back there for that aspect of English culture to like add in here.
And Paul really establishes himself on this song as a player of weird bass lines.
Sure, everybody's great here though. Like, I love that. I love that like that high pitched voice that Danger Mouse chooses to echo Damon's with. That's really cool. It took me a while to get used to, but like really, I said, it's like very pretty. Like psychedelic almost.
Yeah, I like the song quite a bit too, actually.
And Tony kills it here. Like the whole climax is very disheveled, and it feels like the song is collapsing in on itself in a really cool way. Like time is compressing. I don't know. I never loved this one when this album first came out, but it has grown leaps and bounds on me, like revisiting it for the show.
I would love to know who Baby Bunting is, sort of in Damon's eye or in his mind. Like, is Baby Bunting just like the personification of British innocence?
I think there's a lot of personification of all kinds of different British things here going on in this album.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Next is Nature Springs, which is another song that really, really grew on me this revisit.
I forget about the song a lot. I never immediately think of this one when I think of this album. It's it's very in Rainbowsy, the arrangements here, aren't they?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I like that a lot. That's a cool read. And this one almost foreshadows like Plastic Beach in a way. Like not only is Damon singing about submarines, but some of the stuff he does with his keyboards makes it sound like we're actually on one sometimes.
And if you weren't convinced that this is a very good album yet, Damon references Lord Hill's Bridge, which is in Westbourne, an area of London that is named after a spring. So now you should be really impressed and think that this is a pretty good album, Trevor.
Sure, yeah. I mean, of course. At the very least, it's very English. The climax of this one is also really really something. Like, I think it might be the best moment for the band on the album.
Yeah.
Like the first half of this song is good.
I'm not actually crazy about the whistle solo by itself, but the way that it kind of works with what Simon's doing in the picking behind it, I think it actually does work.
Simon's guitar fucking rules here.
So
and
good.
You've also got Damon doing that ominous low humming along with the whistling.
Definitely. And great imagery, too. Everyone's a submarine. Really good imagery happening here.
Yeah, but that climax, the band is really firing on all cylinders here.
The lyric of the song is a short poem. In fact, it forms a pair with the next song we'll talk about, too, in that regard. I guess the way that I've always kind of interpreted this lyric is that it's about how the culture is paused during a time of war, like we have to kind of give way to the natural progression and development of our identity and who we are as a people, and allow kind of the generals to decide who we are for a while,
So this war he keeps referencing, do you take that to be like the conflict in the Middle East?
I think that all war is evil in the parlance of this record. Mm-hmm. But I think when he uses the word war in his lyric, I believe that he is directly talking about what the war in Iraq is doing to the English identity and how guilty the English need to feel about their part in it.
That's so interesting because, like, the war in Iraq and stuff, that always feels so American to me.
It was so fucking English. And while I was in London...
Interesting.
Yeah, while I was in London, there were daily, marches happening of British infantry who were, ready to be shipped out the next day. I guess in England, they do things a little bit more traditionally. So, people would gather to watch the soldiers who were going to ship off to Iraq the next day do this, traditional march in the parks.
Man.
It was fucking dark, dude. It was fucking dark.
I mean, yeah, like I said, whenever I think of war in the context of this album, I think of young British men going off to die in Europe, not the Middle East. But in
a way, it was kind of right up in your face. The war in Iraq was.
Maybe more of this album takes place in the present than I've ever given it credit for.
For sure. And again, I did criticize that little whistle solo, but I do think it works in the context of the piece that it's in.
I think it's really cool, and we got to talk about those strings because they kick ass here.
They're gorgeous. I also love the synth and the pre-chorus. All of the arrangements on this song are really pretty, I think.
The strings almost feel like they're kind of playing a slowed-down version of the Psycho music, from the shower scene.
It's got
totally
the same
kind of pitch to it.
I think that Nature Springs really, really companions nicely with this next song, A Soldier's Tale.
I think Bunting's song Through a Soldier's Tale make a nice little kind of arc almost.
Oh, I can feel that. I could definitely feel that. I think the whistling on this song is much nicer, though. I love
this one's very nice. I always love when Damon goes into pastoral folk mode, and this one reminds me some of the better moments of his opera Dr. D.
Yeah, the strings here are very romantic and very beautiful.
And hearing him sing about computers here, like I said, is kind of weird for me.
It is weird, right?
Feels very contemporary on a song and an album that, for the most part, do not.
For some reason, this song makes me think about insomnia. He does talk about it being late night and worrying about computers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. This is both of these lyrics, Nature Spring and A Soldier's Tale, and Bunting song too. They're really strong. I think they're really nice pieces of writing.
This one's always made me think of not that this is an experience I know anything about, but coming back from a war and kind of having to ingratiate yourself back into everyday civilian life. But there's some stuff about you that's never going to be unchanged. Yeah,
that's a really good take on it too. I totally actually see that in the lyrics.
This sounds like a very rehabilitory song.
I feel that, and even though he says A Soldier's Tale, I think he's kind of calling the average British Joe a soldier here. I don't know that he's actually talking about Army, Navy, Air Force or anything.
I like that read of it a lot too. Yeah.
There are 3 songs left on this album, and now we've finally gotten to the first of my top 3.
Well, this one kind of counts as 3 songs in itself, doesn't it?
3 changes. Number 1 on the record for me. This song is fucking sick.
This one is really cool. And okay, I've told you that I had heard this song a few times before I'd heard it on the actual album.
Uh-huh.
It is nothing like the live version, which is kind of just a straightforward indie rock song almost. Danger Mouse really fucked this one up.
In amazing ways.
In a good way. In a good way. He fucked with it. He didn't fuck it up. It's really cool on the album.
Honestly, if this band had just issued this song as a sequence, that would have been a relevant moment in Damon Albarn's career. This hits every theme on the record in good ways.
This feels like the Plastic Beach of this album, in that it only makes sense in the context of the record, but we get it since we've listened to most of the record by now.
Absolutely.
Like, this feels like where we've been going to.
And I think the band as a unit has never sounded better and will never sound better on this record. I think that they're a fucking machine on this song.
They really lock into parts. And when they played this live, this would always like kind of like bring the house down, and it's in the part of the album to do it.
For sure. And we've got that sun motif. The day is dull and mild. We've got this endless overcast that never lets up. But
I love how violent this song gets too.
Yeah, so this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, of like it having such a different perspective than Demon Days in a way, because like at this point on Demon Days we're getting into Don't Get Lost in Heaven Demon Days territory, where it's like, come on, we can make it, we can make the change, we can do it. And this is much darker and more fucked up. It's much more like, I will persist in spite of all of you fucked up idiots. Like, I don't care anymore.
Not going to be a victim. This sounds like we're burning down Parliament.
Exactly.
Like, this is what I hear when I look at that album cover. It's really good.
What's up with that little like brief
the laugh?
No, the little lounge. The little.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I know that this was originally 3 kind of like half songs that Danger Mouse kind of helped them work together into one kind of like changing piece, hence the name. So I don't know, maybe that's like a little sketch that they decided to just include as kind of like like a little interlude.
It's kind of cool, but holy shit, Tony Allen is a demon. I don't know how the fuck he's doing some of this stuff. And
this is also my favorite Paul bass work on the album.
I think that the two of them lock together better than anywhere else on the album. Like
really good.
Somehow Tony and Paul, whose playing styles could not really be more different, found the common grammar between their styles on this one and create such a synergy. And Tony's fills are crazy. Sometimes he does these whole fills just on the floor tom, and like, holy shit, man, this is a tour de force performance from Tony. I love the song. It's my favorite on the album. I love this song.
What do you think of the version of this on that Damon Live solo album, Live at the DD Dur Dur?
It would have been really excited for him to bust it out on the tour, but it's not one that I go back to or anything.
Right, it's got a very long, extended outro, though, which is kind of fun.
I think I remember Shea doing some interesting stuff on that, though. Shea Adelakan doing some cool guitar work on that. But I'd have to go back to it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Next we have Greenfields.
Yeah, this is number 3 on the album for me, of my top 3. I think this is really pretty. It's very Beatles-esque. It has an interesting story. Do you know the story about this?
I do know the story, because Damon would fucking say it over and over again when he was promoting this album.
Tell it to the good people at home.
I only like half remember it, dude. Do you know it?
Yeah, I do.
Like,
Marianne
are you ready
Faithfull,
to go? It's like, yeah, he wrote a song, and then Marianne Faithfull used it, and then he remembered the song while out drinking with Alex from Blur one night, and he kind of rewrote it.
You almost got it.
So why don't you regale us?
Marianne Faithfull, if you don't know, was like a celebrity of the 1970s. She was, I guess, most famous really for dating Mick Jagger, but she also had like a career as kind of an easy listening pop vocalist. In fact, famously in the song Can't You Hear Me Knockin', when Mick Jagger sings, "Yeah, you got cocaine eyes," he was talking about Marianne Faithfull, and she definitely did. Her eyes are always kind of like bleary and fucked up. Anyway, so Alec Jane from Blur and Marianne Faithfull and Damon Albarn all went out for drinks. I guess they were talking about working, and they overdid it. They took a cab home to Marianne Faithfull's place. They were all hanging out and chatting, and then Damon disappeared into Marianne's studio downstairs and came back up, and they were like, "Where were you?" And he was like, "I don't know." And then they continued, and then the next day, Marianne found this demo in like the recorder, the 4-track or whatever of her studio, and phoned him up when she was working on her next album, saying, "Hey, you made this lovely demo. I'd love to do a version of it for my next album." And he was like, "I don't remember making this song at all, but sure." And so the version of the song that we have on here has kind of like a new lyric that is kind of about that experience, I guess.
Yeah, it's become a song about a song, as he'd love to talk about. But like, Damon loved telling this story.
But I'll tell you, the chorus, which I believe is kind of like sung from the perspective of the earth, mourning man and the development and sort of prostitution of the earth, that we saw the green fields turn into stone, is like gorgeous, and
it's really nice. The chorus is very
beautiful.
Cool.
This absolutely makes it onto like my all-time like Damon Albarn melancholy playlist. I think it's beautiful.
The verses are very nice, like, again, more of that pastoral folk stuff. But then when the chorus hits, it almost kind of turns into this like psychedelic little carnival jaunt with like Damon's organ. It feels very surreal and very dreamlike.
Yeah, it's a mix of like what George Harrison was doing at that part of the 60s with what John Lennon was doing during that part of the 60s in a way. Like it's got that, it's so pretty. Yeah,
it really feels like we go into slow motion there.
One of my favorite Paul Simonon moments on this is how he brings us back into each verse with that bum 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 bum. That's so good.
He's really great.
Yeah, I don't know. This is kind of lovely. And Marianne Faithfull's version of this song, which has a totally different lyric from her solo album, is nice too. You should check it out.
Yeah, maybe I will. But for now, let's check out the last song on this album.
The title track.
The Good, the Bad, and the Queen.
Great. You put a lot of commas in there, I'm noticing.
Well, some of them are ellipses. This probably rounds out my top 3. This one or Bunting song.
This is my number 2. This is my number 2. I think that this is still some of the greatest keys work in Damon Albarn's entire career.
And it's also got some of the best guitar work on a Damon Albarn song too, I think. I really love what Simon's putting down here.
This is the culmination of the sun motif.
It is. This is our demon days. This is when everything parts.
The sun came out of the clouds and charged up the satellites, and we all got our energy back and started talking again. And
turn yourself around to the sun.
I watched this happen. I watched this happen in about June of 2006, when finally we had our first bright blue sunny day of the summer in London. And it was like I woke up in a different country. Everybody was like out and partying and having a good time. This lyric really nailed that experience in my life. Also, this has that classic British humor in it with the great lyric, "Don't kick the crackheads off the green. They're a political party."
I like that a lot. It's the blessed routine for the good, the bad, and the queen.
So good. And man, the outro is so satisfying. The outro
is really good. First of all, though, I love that little bite Simon adds to his guitar when Damon says the name of the band or the project or whatever. I think that's really charming.
It's almost like he's playing like their jingle or something.
I have one very specific live bootleg of this song that I really loved, where he would sing the good, the bad, and the queen, and Simon would go Branham, and the audience just kind of started applauding a little bit, and it was just such a great moment because it's like here we are, we made it. It's like you're reading a novel, and in the last chapter, one of the characters drops the name of the novel in some dialogue. You're like, that's why it's called that.
And the last 2/3 of this song are kind of dedicated to this huge, slow speed up of a jam. And even though Damon is the furthest back in the mix, his piano hammering is astounding. Fuck Ike Turner.
Ike Turner. Let's just say it. Fuck Ike Turner.
The great, cacophonous piano hammering that Damon's doing here, I think
Castrophonous,
is so good.
Almost.
Castrophonous, exactly.
I like it a lot. And like I said, I love all of the fierce textures Simon's adding here. I cannot understate how much I appreciate his guitar work on this album.
It's really special. It makes me think they should let that one dude in Radiohead do some more stuff.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, maybe he'll join the Good, the Bad, and the Queen, and they'll have 2 half guitarists in the band.
I love the note that this one goes out on too. I mean, the jam kind of peters out, but then we're left with this kind of almost little music box version of it.
Really cool. It sounded like it might have been an early exploratory take of the song or something that they've kind of affected and put some filters on.
It's very wintry.
It's really fun, and just the band did such a good job just selling the imagery of the sun finally coming up on England. You know.
Mm-hmm. It just definitely stands shoulder to shoulder to Demon Days, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think just the way that the London Community Gospel Choir sold that moment on Demon Days, I think the boys are all selling it really good here.
It's a great parallel.
Really good, man.
And that's TG, TB, ampersand, TQ.
For sure.
Before we stop talking about these boys, though, I want to recommend that everybody go out and look for this album's B-sides.
There's some
They're all
interesting
really
ones.
good.
Yeah.
There's like 6 or so of them. Like there's this kind of really cool instrumental jam back in the day. There's a really interesting piece called Mr. Whippy.
Mr. Whippy is great.
Really cool. It has some spoken word by, I can't remember who it is.
Yeah, this week I found somebody on YouTube who just like had a good little playlist of all of the non-album.
I have a little EP in my iTunes library that I made myself called Kingdom of Doom.
You know what? I think here's the note I want to go out on with this record is that we need the next one. Like fucking
yeah, I really would love another record by these guys. Although honestly, without Danger Mouse's production, it's I don't know. It's going to be different. It's definitely going to be a different animal.
But as much as this album speaks to me in 2017 about the realities of our time, not just for England, but kind of for the world and for Western life as we kind of know it, I need more of that. I need this form of writing from Damon at this time in my life. It would be just, I don't know, it would be something that would maybe not necessarily pick me up, but be meditative for me.
Yeah, I mean, Humans was also kind of a meditation on like the state of the world, but he really let the collaborators kind of take the front seat with that one and dictate what was going to like be said on the record. So it'd be cool to see him actually us to get his perspective on this.
And I mean, the ugly head of nationalism is rearing itself in all corners of England. So there are there's plenty of inspiration for him to write a classic with this outfit again. So
come on, Damon, you can do it. Do you think it'll have an album title or something?
That's what I wonder. Like, is Warner Music gonna shit themselves when he's like, no, don't put Good Bad Queen on the album cover because it's not the name of the band.
The Good, the Bad, and the Queen 2. even Brexiter. Definitely go look out for those B-sides too. I wanted to mention Doghouse. That one's my favorite. Really cool instrumental jam.
Give it a spin.
Give it a spin.
Give this record a spin too, you youngins.
And what record should they give a spin so that they're ready to keep up with us next week? What are we going to be talking about?
I forgot. I don't have the list in front of me. I don't know what's next. This is pretty much the closest to a Gorillaz album you're going to get next week.
Oh
we're going to be talking about Monkey Journey to the West.
Journey to the West.
The accompanying soundtrack to Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett's Mandarin opera from 2008?
Yeah, something like that. This one's
going to be a real pain in the ass to talk about. I can already feel it.
I'm both scared and excited, but it's in some ways it's a little horrifying that it's taking us this long because it's
seriously.
This is like I hate to say it, but this is kind of a fucking Gorillaz project. So
they talked about it in like the press as if it was they mentioned like we wanted to release it as a Gorillaz thing, but the label wouldn't let us. But we'll get all into that next week. Until then, do you want to say where our loyal listeners can find us online?
Yes, absolutely. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook and Amino and Instagram and Tumblr. You can join our Discord at discord.me/monkeys with a Z. You can send us an email to hallelujahmonkeyz@gmail.com. Be sure to check out our YouTube page, which is maintained by the fabulous Stewpot or Stew Potato on DeviantArt. Thank you so much to those of you who leave us reviews on iTunes, and even more thank you to the generous few of you who have decided to open up your pocketbooks and go to patreon.com/Hallelujah Monkeyz to help with the cost of the server and keeping the show free to you, the listener. We really, really appreciate it. And don't forget to stick around after the outro song to hear a brand new world premiere exclusive from Gorillaz vs. Log S. That again, work it out.
Yeah, we got Log S coming up next, but that's about all the time that me and Dylan have. So for now, I've been Trevor Ickrath.
I've been Dylan Flynn.
And until next week, don't get lost in heaven.
Demo!
With yours, we dive into the floor. When we reach the core, then we stomp some more. I like hands with yours, and then we some miles till we reach the car, and then we circle back and we stomp some more. Got it? It's just like that. You promise that you left and you turn your back. You fly across the space and diagonal past, and you kick and you jump and you arch your back. You move your hips and your arms like a cat. Spin 3 times on your back where you're at. I'm starting to catch what any of this is about. No, well, work it out. Work it out. It's a cold black abyss. Don't take the chance, no, not the risk. Out of the body. Out of the body. Out of the body. Out of the body. Who knows? There's always stains on what's real and true. Tonight is a special occasion. And all that's left for us to do is move.
I didn't set up to play clips, so I don't know if we actually want to do that dare clip that we teased in the last episode or just skip it.
I think we should do that as like a deleted scene at the very end of the show because it doesn't like we already have a lot of news. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah. There's
let's do the show, and then we'll play Jack's song,
Right.
And then we'll drop the clip talking about Dare. Yeah. So Dylan, did you see Sean Ryder's been in the news again?
Yeah. And fortunately it wasn't, at least we can say this time the police weren't involved and there were no substances involved.
Nothing seized in large quantities.
No, yeah, nothing like that. But he looks healthy. Don't you think he looks better?
Oh yeah, I mean, and he was very lucid. Like I was very surprised by how articulate he sounded. But most of my exposure to him has been on Dare and in surrounding Gorillaz interviews. So
let's recap. So there's the story that started coming out around the time the Dare single was issued, right?
Yeah, if you're a Gorillaz fan, you've heard this. You've probably heard this story before. So I don't know why we're going into it, but let's get everybody else caught up.
They claimed that the hook from Dare. Well, first of all, it was supposed to be called "It's There."
It's there,
and then plus at one point, Sean Ryder's headphones weren't loud enough, and he went into that vocal booth to track some vocals for "It's There," but quick snag in the proceedings. He couldn't hear himself in his headphones. When you go in and record a track, you typically get something called a monitor where you hear what you're saying into the mic through your headphones, but he couldn't hear it. Right, and so he was asking for his headphones to come up.
He's like, "Hey, boys, volume up a little bit, please. I can't." Anybody who's heard an Eminem song will be familiar with this kind of dilemma.
And then he goes, "It's coming up, it's coming up, it's coming up.
It's coming up, it's coming up, it's coming up." And what did he say when they finally reached that optimal level?
He said, "It's there."
Is that what he said, Dylan?
Well, that's what he tried to say.
That's what he tried to say, but he's got quite the thick accent, our Mr. Ryder.
Manchester. Yeah, he said, "It's Dare."
It's Dare, and one of the most popular Gorillaz singles of all time was born.
Right, but then was the song already called "It's There" before that? Again, there's a lot of things that don't seem to add up in this fucking story. But
it's one of those pieces of Gorillaz lore where, nothing is ever quite as it seems.
For sure. But we did have Kerry Levy on the show, and we did ask him about it, and he said that it was mostly a true anecdote. That was how
the Gorillaz crew, the Gorillaz family sticks adamantly to this story.
Yes, and then just now we had Sean Ryder on the on not a podcast but a radio show somewhere, I think in Australia. I think.
Huh. Okay.
And then he basically just told the whole story again. Said that it was just him ad-libbing, not even trying to ad-lib, but he came up with the hook because he wanted his headphones up. According to this man, who knows how vivid his memories of this period of time are.
It's a little too convenient, isn't it, that he's got this same exact story like that we've heard from everybody else. Who's feeding these guys lies?
Yeah, right. You know who I think it is?
Is it who do you think it is?
I think it's Phase 3 side villain, the Evangelist, who we never even talked about on this show.
I was going to say Dr. Wurzel.
Ooh, Dr. Wurzel. That's a good call.
Although it might go all the way to the top. It might be our boy Damon Albarn himself, because as I'm probably sure we talked about on the episode, he loves having these little stories about his songs that he will repeat ad infinitum, because he never gets tired of these little jokes that he has with himself. And usually I feel like he's a lot more amused by it. Sean, than anybody else.
Your publicist told me that you're going to be on an Australian radio show. If it comes up, I trust you know what to say. If it comes up, I trust you'll stick to the party line, Sean.
And the party line is what it is. Thank you. That's the perfect describer for it.
Sean Ryder.
Do you make money from the Gorillaz from Dare?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Coming up. It's there.
Now, I can't remember if I have asked you this before, so if I have, apologise. The story I heard was...
Go on.
that tune, the lyric was, "It's there." And when you were in the studio, you were like, "It's there." And they're like, it's there. And you go, "It's there." And so they went, "Oh, do you know what? Just call it Dare."
Right, okay.
That's what I heard.
So my story is, right,
okay.
Damon gets up a beat and he gets... the tune going, and I go in, and I'm trying to get the cans to get in my ears, and I'm going, "It's going up, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up," and I go, "It's there," and that's my story.
Get over! Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah.
So really,
there was no lyrics.
So
there was no song.
So that's basically an outtake.
Well, yeah, it was the first take, and that's what he used. Now that's my story. Damon might tell a different story, but that's my story.
Great.
So that easily could have been bit higher, bit higher,
yeah.
bingo.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Radio. It's there.